Hello and welcome to another episode of me reacting to fan-made cards I found online. This episode we're going over a set of 10 project cards made by VincentThurillet. I hope I didn't butcher your name. He actually asked me to review these cards, sent me this pack via email, and they are very interesting, so I obliged. First off, we have Jovian Design Office. This card costs 19, has a max requirement of 2 Jovians, has a Jovian tech itself. I guess that means when you play this would be the third Jovian. It has a building tech as well, so similar to Colonizer Training Camp, which for now is the only Jovian tech that has a building tech as well. It is a Jovian multiplier, but it is a 1-for-2 Jovian multiplier, so it is not as strong as the other Jovian multipliers, which is very good because it has a strong effect as well, and it costs significantly less than some of the Jovian multipliers. And then it has an effect that is kind of complicated, but first of all, the first part is not that complicated. It just says when you play a Jovian tech, you pay 2 MC less for it. So this is just a discount for Jovians. That's fine. And then you may discard one card, so similar to Marzu, whenever you play a Jovian tech, to draw one card per 3 Jovian techs you have, including this. So that means if you play Jovian Design Office, exactly when you have 2 Jovians in play already, this will be the third one, and then you will be able to discard a card and draw one. If you play this as your first Jovian tech, you won't get to draw a card, which means you also don't have to discard one, obviously. But this also means if you play Jovian Design Office and afterwards you play Jovian techs, you always get to trigger this, and that can be quite strong. So for example, if you play this as your third Jovian tech, you get to trigger this once, then you play another Jovian tech, you get to trigger it again, and it's exactly like Marzu, you discard a card and draw a new one. Starting with your 6th Jovian tech though, you get to discard a card and then draw 2. And with your 9th, you would in theory draw 3, but getting to 9 Jovian techs is very difficult. If we take a look at the base game, in just the base game, we only have 12 Jovian techs, including Saturn systems, and it's 208 project cards. So, like roughly 5% of cards are Jovian techs. You are very rarely seeing more than or playing more than 5 or 6 Jovian techs. That's very, very rare. But still, this is quite a strong effect because even with just the third to 5th Jovian tech, for example, it's a discount for Jovians and it's also the Marzu effect for Jovians. And then it also is like a half-point multiplier. Because it's a discount, you also don't mind that you have to play it early. Of course, if you see this late game and already have 3 Jovians down, you are really sad because then you can't play it anymore. But I believe if you know you're going for a Jovian strategy, this is one of the best cards you can find. Getting them down more cheaply, drawing more cards, it's like it sounds completely ridiculous because it's a stronger effect than Marzu, starting with the third tech. But if we compare Jovians to science techs, as I said, there are 12 Jovian techs in the base game, including Saturn systems, and there are 33 science techs. That's why Marzu is so strong. You can trigger it with like 15% of cards in the base game, roughly. And Jovian Design Office, you can only trigger with 5% of cards in the base game. So it is a really strong effect, but it gets triggered rarely. Still, I like especially introducing a half-point Jovian multiplier. I don't think every Jovian multiplier needs to be 1 point for one Jovian. Something like this can also be really, really interesting. I would love if there were also Venus multipliers in the game. That would be cool. But yeah, I overall like the design. I think this is a card that you'd need to playtest because the ability is really, really strong. But it gets triggered quite rarely. The balance there, to find the balance there is kind of difficult. One thing I don't like that much about this card is that you need to and that it does so much. So different stuff, like it gives you a discount, it draws you cards, and it grants you points based on how many Jovians you have. That's maybe too much on a single card. Maybe you could drop one of the things and make it a bit cheaper instead. But yeah, it's kind of like solar logistics, which just does too much. But yeah, definitely an interesting design. Next up, we have GEB development. This costs 17, has a science requirement of 2, offers a science tag and microbe tag, so similar to designed microorganisms, and it really is similar to designed microorganisms because it also grants plant prot. But more interestingly, instead of giving you 2 flat plant prot, it gives you an action that allows you to put microbes on here and then remove these microbes to get plant prot. The microbes cannot be removed from this card, similar to pets. And it starts with a microbe, so you instantly get 1 plant prot with GEB development. And that, I think, makes it, like, if it wasn't for the requirement, this would make it much, much stronger than designed microorganisms. Because if you play this in the first gen, you get a plant prot in the first gen, you get a plant prot in the third gen, in the fifth gen, in the seventh gen. I think this is quite nice for an early plant producer. It has 2 useful tags. Yes, it's pretty expensive, but I think it's quite nice. The thing holding it back though is the 2 science requirement, because the later you play this, the more useless it gets, because it takes time to, like, production cards get lose in value the longer the game goes on. But if a card takes time to grant you production because you need to do the action, same with local shading, for example, then the effect of the card getting weaker the later you play it is even more pronounced. With local shading, it's not as bad because local shading is really, really cheap. GEB development is really expensive though. So playing this in the mid game is atrocious. So you have to play this really, really early on. You probably need to be quite a rich corp to do this. But I think if you can get this down easily in Gen 1 with a somewhat rich corp, like Terraformation, for example, or Credit Core, then I think this is quite strong. And I like the idea. I think there need to be more microbe cards in the game that do wacky stuff. Let animal cards be the cards that just grant points very efficiently, and let microbe cards be the cards that let you do wacky stuff. And GB development is definitely a really interesting idea. So I like this card. Next up, Terraformation Loyalty Scheme. It costs 11, has a requirement of 24 TR, so similar to Terraforming Contract. You need a bit of TR to play this, so this makes it much harder to play in Turmoil where you lose 1 TR each generation. But 24 is so low you could even get there in the first gen, even with the Prudence alone. It has an Earth tag, it grants a point, and it allows you to increase your MC production 1 step for free each gen. So this is a bit more expensive, harder to play version, but faster version of local shading that I just talked about, which just grants you MC prod. This one does it faster, but as I said, it's more expensive, grants a point, and has a requirement. Not the most flashy card. It's really similar to GEB development. The later you play these kinds of cards, the worse they get. This is a bit alleviated by the fact that it has a point on it, so it can be worth it in the early mid game, I guess, but much later than that, no. It's another good. I probably should put the calculation on screen right now, because I think if you play this in the first gen, it could get out of hand. Would it? You play it first gen, it's 3 prot in gen 3. And then, yeah, it's pretty strong for banker as well if you play it early. But as I said, it's an earth tag that I'll put the calculation on screen how this compares to acquired company, which is similar in price, but and also has an Earth tech. Earth techs often grant really good production. Terraformation loyalty scheme is no exception. Like if you get a start with like sponsors, Terraformation loyalty scheme, space hotels and cartel, that would be a really good development start. It fits right into that that kind of niche, and it's probably quite strong. So yeah, I like it. I mean, local shading is not too broken. Local shading is a good development card, and as I said, it compares favorably to that card in some points. Mainly, it's much faster to get that. Unfavorably in other points, it's harder to get it down, it's more expensive, and it doesn't help you on Hoverlord. But yeah, it's an interesting idea. Probably could be put into a game like this. Yeah, let's move on. Megalopolis. This is a really expensive card, costs 34, requires 3 cities on Mars, has a city tech and a building tech. It requires 2 power prod, that will be removed, grants 6 MC prod. You place 2 adjacent city tiles, so this lets you place 2 city tiles instead of 1. And then you get basically half a point per gen via this action. You just add a population resource here, and then 2 population resources grant you 1 point. There, I guess both of these cities need to adhere to city placement rules. So you cannot place them next to any other cities, but they need to be placed next to each other. That makes it kind of hard to place this. Like in the mid to late game, where you have to play this because 3 cities already need to be in play, and this is also really expensive and you need power prod, so you can't play this early on. In the mid to late game, it will be hard to place this. Sometimes it will even be impossible. And I think that's the problem of this. Also, you need to place this in the late game, but the action it grants means that you would rather want to place it in the early game so you can get more points out of it. If for some reason there are 3 cities on the board, you have tons of steel left over. Like there are 3 cities on the board, but there's still a place to put this. You have tons of steel left over, tons of power prod left over. Then this is a really good point dump. You can put this next to greeneries. Instead of giving you 6 spots to put greeneries around, like if you have a lot of plant prod and you put this down, you instead of having 6 spots to put greeneries around, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 spots to put greeneries around, and 2 of them even give double points. So that's really nice. But yeah, as I said, I can imagine a lot of scenarios on Tharsis, for example, or probably not on Elysium. Elysium, the southern half of the map, often gets completely left alone for like the first half of the game. But on Tharsis and on Hellas, I can imagine a lot of scenarios where putting this down somewhere is really difficult if you have to adhere to regular city placement rules, except for the fact that you put these 2 cities next to each other. And even if you find a spot, then often the spot won't grant you a lot of points. Like I can see quite a few scenarios where placing a single city would in that instance give you more points than placing Megalopolis, even though in theory they could touch more greeneries, and even some spots could touch where there are some spots where both of these cities touch a single greenery and give you more points because of that. But just the city placement rule will screw you over sometimes. Also, the cost of this is enormous. 34, and then each power prod is worth 7 MC, so that is 14, 48. 48 for 2 cities. That's not that cheap. A city standard project costs 25, comes with an MC prod, and is easier placeable, more easily to place. Like this I don't know. I think Megalopolis is a bit too weak. Maybe you remove a little bit of the DMC prod. You get rid of the action and effect, but therefore lower the price and at least lower the city requirement, so you can place it early on, even though early on you don't want to waste that much money or steel on a point card. I don't know. I think it's a very, very niche card for some situations in the late game, with like mining guild. If the stars align and there's a good spot on the map and you have tons of steel left over, then Megalopolis could be good, but I don't see it being great regularly. But let's move on to Microbial proliferation. This is, I think, Splice's best friend. It costs 5, has a microbe tag on it. It requires each global parameter to be raised at least one step. So you need one ocean. You need to be at 1% oxygen, 1% oxygen and a minus 28 degrees. Every third microbe on this card grants you a point, and it has 2 effects. Similarly to Splice, if you play a microbe tag yourself, both effects trigger. But if someone else if someone else plays a microbe tag, only the upper effect triggers. So when any microbe tag is played, that is also your opponent's, including this, add 1 microbe to this card. And when you play a microbe tag, including this, add 1 microbe to another card. So if anyone plays a microbe, you get a microbe on microbial proliferation. And if you play a microbe, you get, because of this upper effect, again, a microbe on microbial proliferation, but you also get a microbe to another card. So optimally, you want to have 1 more microbe collecting card down when you play microbial proliferation. So you can put microbes on that one and on this card. I think then this is quite strong, because it's basically, it's similar to decomposers. Triggers a lot less if you play green tags, because it only triggers on microbes instead of all green tags. But it also triggers on opponent's microbes. So you will collect quite a few microbes on here, similar to decomposers, and score exactly the same ratio as decomposers. But it also has a little bit of a viral enhancers effect, putting microbes on other cards. And microbial proliferation isn't the strongest microbe collecting card, but there are cards out there that would really combo well with this. Something like ants, something like sulfur-eating bacteria, something like Venusian insects. If you get that down, plus microbial proliferation, and then you play a lot of microbe tags afterwards, you can get quite a bit of bang for your buck with this card. But you also need to play a lot of microbe tags to trigger this this lower effect, which can combo with strong microbe cards. And finding that many microbe cards isn't easy. But yeah, I like this. I think it's fairly priced. The idea of the max requirement, which requires at least 1 step in all parameters, is quite nice. We haven't seen something like that. I don't think there's a single card that requires at least two global parameters to be at a certain level. So this is a great idea. I like this card. I think it's fine. It could be added to the game like this. Yeah, and as I said, Splice's best friend. And then we have another really cool idea. Post-combustion capture, costs 6 MC, has a power tag. Finally, a power card a power tag that doesn't just grant you power prod, although this does grant you power, but in a really creative way. It states, when you convert heat into temperature, gain 2 energy. So that means that basically your heat conversion into temperature is discounted by 2, because in the end you will only pay 6 heat, because the 2 energy will convert back to heat. You could also use this when you're playing with colonies to trade. So let's say you have a lot of heat prod, but only 1 power prod. Every time you convert heat into temperature, you gain 2 energy. With the 1 that you get from your production, you have enough to trade. Same with oxygen bumpers, same with development center, physics complex, and so on. It definitely combos. I think it would combo quite well with oxygen bumpers, because if you have a lot of heat and want to convert all of that heat into temperature, that means you're probably rushing and getting an oxygen bumper down and using the free energy you get out of post-combustion capture means that you also get to increase the oxygen at a faster rate because you can use your bumper. Even if you're already at 4 energy, this is still great, because then you can maybe, even if you're already at 4 energy prod, this is still great because then you can maybe play a power hungry card, still be able to use your oxygen bumper, or you just let your power convert into heat. That's also fine. If you have, basically, if you have 4 heat prod down, this grants you 1 energy prod, then it's not quite such a good deal, because 1 energy prod costs 7 MC, this costs 9. If you have 8 heat prod down, then this basically is 2 energy prod. And then this is significantly discounted in comparison to, for example, geothermal power, which costs 11 plus 3. So somewhere in between that, there's the fair price that you can reach. But another upside of this is that your energy prod can get tapped. This cannot get tapped. You could get hit by heat trappers or cloud seeding. So I guess you can get tapped, but more indirectly. But yeah, post-combustion capture, I think is a really interesting concept. I really love it. And once again, if you're playing with colonies or if you have an oxygen bumper down, this is a really good card. Next up, Renovation Insurance. Costs 4 MC, has an Earth tag. When you play a building tag, you may pay 1 MC to add 1 insurance resource to this card. And 3 insurance resources are worth 1 point. I don't think this is that strong. A point is roughly worth 5 MC. Dust Seals, for example, costs 2 MC plus 3. So here you pay 3 MC for a point, and you also need to play, plus the 4 plus 3 you pay to play Renovation Insurance. I'll put a calculation on screen right now that shows you when this actually pays off in terms of points and how many building tags you need to play for that, because I believe this is quite not such a good deal. It's just very, very cumbersome to get a lot of points out of this. Sure, it's also a cheap card that you can play early on without any requirements. But if you play this early on and you pay 1 MC more for each building tag, that will really hinder your development early on. And that's what you want to do with building tags. Building tags are meant for development in the early game, at least a lot of them. And a lot of them aren't that great if you pay 1 more for them. Basically, it's like decomposers, but you need to pay for each microbe. I don't like that much. Sure, if you have tons of steel prod card draw, you basically draw a lot of building tags for free and get them down with your steel prod, then you surely also have 1 MC left for each of those cards and get a few points out of it. But what do you pay for 1 point with this card? You pay 7 plus 3 is 10. So for the first point, you play 10 MC. That's not much. And then that's quite a lot for 1 point. Then for the second point, you play 13. I mean, I've put the scheme on screen, so you see how much you pay for the points. But yeah, I don't think it's that strong. I mean, not every card needs to be strong, especially a card that costs 4, has an Earth tag and no requirement. But I don't know how often I would play this. But yeah, definitely an interesting idea. Boost from the world government. This is really interesting. So it costs 0, has an event tag, and requires you to have strictly the lowest MC production. So you need to be in a really bad spot. And if that's the case, you can play this card. You get 1 MC prot, you get 6 MC instantly, and you get 1 negative point. It reminds me of, I don't know the card. I pull it on screen right now that requires, I think, 2 Earth tags and is a really, really good deal. Boost from the world government is not as strong, I feel like. The instant boost is greater, but with that other card, you get, I think, 2 MC prot. I don't quite remember. Let me look it up. I think it's a colonies card. It has an earth tag. Heavy taxation. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, with that you get 2 MC prot and 4 MC. And it has an earth tag. Because you already require 2 earth tags, the great thing about heavy taxation is often you're either like Terractor or you have Earth Office with that card, or your Point Luna, or you want to play Cartel afterwards. So it really works well with all of the Earth combo. Boost from the world government, sure, you can get a discount or you can get a rebate with Media Group, but it doesn't fit into a combo that strongly. Also, you need to be in a really bad spot to play this, but it can help you get out of the bad spot. And sometimes if you're rushing, you're not playing a lot of development cards, that doesn't necessarily mean you're in a bad spot. And if you're rushing, this is a really good card, because if you're rushing, you really want a boost to your economy. Like an instant boost is great, and the small little boost here is also great. And the negative point really doesn't matter, because you want to, if you're rushing, you're in a point lead in the early to mid game anyways. You just want to finish the game quickly before the engine players can catch up in points. And then a negative point really isn't that bad. So I think this is a really cool idea with this requirement. It also means, in contrast to heavy taxation, that like engine players who are already in a really good spot cannot play this. So yeah, cool idea. It makes sense lore-wise. I like it. Material compensation costs 9 MC, has an event tag. It requires that you have neither steel nor titanium, so completely blank on minerals. And it needs to be generation 6 or later. That's also something we've never seen. There hasn't been a card that requires a certain gen to be reached or not reached. Material compensation does, so you need to finally keep track of the generations. I always forget that if I play on the board. And it grants 4 steel and 4 titanium. That's worth 8 plus 12 is 20. So you get, and the card costs 9 plus 3, so you get plus 8 out of it. The requirement can sometimes be quite a hassle, because sometimes you just don't find enough. If you have a lot of mineral prots, sometimes you just don't find enough cards to spend it all. And if you don't find enough cards to spend it all, then you can't play material compensation. It's good that you can't play it early on, because it would be an incredible amount of incredible boost to your starting capital if you could play this in Gen 1. And also in Gen 1, the likelihood that you don't have any minerals is quite high, except if you maybe play a prelude that grants you instant minerals. The good thing about this, because it is instant, it doesn't really matter if you play this in Gen 6 or 8 or 10. Of course, having capital earlier on is great, because then you can also get like production cards online and get the benefits out of them earlier. But if you're just using this to play a point card, it really doesn't matter if you play this in Gen 6 or 10. With a production card, you would like to play it early on. With an instant benefit, it doesn't matter when you play it. It doesn't increase in value like something like Media Archives, which you definitely want to play in the last gen, so you get the most out of it. This just stays flat in value, but you could find more discounts or Media Group or whatever. So you can at least hold out for that and keep this card around until you finally have a situation where you don't have any minerals and it's Gen 6 or later. And then you play this for instant benefit. So I like it. And it's a cool idea with the requirement and all. And lastly, we have medical mass evacuation. And this is a hate card that I would absolutely go crazy about. So it costs 7. It has a 2 degrees Celsius requirement, has a microbe tag and an event tag. It gives you -2 points, but for that you get to remove a player's cube from any city tile. And that's just diabolical. Like if there's an opponent who has spent all of the game surrounding one of his cities with greeneries, and then you remove the cube from it, and he just loses 6 points while you lose 2. That's just, oh my god, I would flip the table so hard. For 10 MC, 4 points. Of course, the value of this is drastically higher in a 2P game, where you exactly know who you're hitting. You're only fighting against one opponent, so hitting him, getting he losing points is the same value as you gaining points. In a 3 or 4P game, this drastically loses in value, except if like it's really late in game, which it will be, and you already know, okay, I'm fighting for first place with that guy, the other guy is completely far behind, it doesn't matter what that guy does, then it's basically the same situation as in a 2P game. But if all players are on roughly the same level, then medical mass evacuation is really not that great, because you also lose 2 points, and then the third player that doesn't get hit by anything, neither by the cube being removed or by the negative points from that card, he will just be laughing his ass off and saying, hey, great that you fight each other, I will just take first place now. But in 2P, this is really, really strong in certain scenarios. Of course, in some games, no one will have a city with 6 greeneries around it. Like, it's not that common to have a city with 6 greeneries around it, but even if there's 5 greeneries around it, it's +3 points for 10. That's the great deal. With 4 greeneries around it, it's +2. That's an okay deal. 2 points for 10 is okay if you have some combo potential for this. I said earlier, victory point is roughly worth 5 MC. So you're getting a fair deal out of it. If you have combo potential, then it's really good. But 3 or less greeneries obviously isn't great. But in the best case scenario in 2P, this card is insane. I really enjoy the idea. Messing with someone's cities, really cool idea. Probably would lead to a few table flips. But yeah, I really enjoy it. But yeah, that was it for today. That were the 10 project cards I wanted to go over. If you also have fan-made cards that you created that you want me to go over, please just let me know in the comments, and then we can certainly share them, and I will take a look. If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like and consider subscribing. I hope I see you in the next video. Have a good one, guys, and goodbye.